Meanwhile, let's go to the US. President Biden says he's looking forward to getting back on the campaign trail next week after his isolation with COVID. Pressure mounted on the US president overnight when a Democratic congressman who described Mr. Biden as a mentor and friend didn't seem to recognize him at a D-Day event last month. Here's our North America correspondent Peter Bowes.
The calls for Joe Biden to get out of the presidential race are not letting up. In all, more than 30 Democratic members of Congress, including 4 senators, have said they don't think he can beat Donald Trump. Seth Moulton, a congressman from Massachusetts, was one of the first to speak out after the president's disastrous debate performance. Now he's elaborating on why he thinks his longtime mentor and friend should step down. Joe Biden, he says, used to greet him with a big, wide grin and say how glad he was to see the congressman. But last month, at a small gathering in France, he said the president didn't seem to recognise him. He says the incident led him to the crushing realisation that Joe Biden would be unable to defeat Donald Trump in November. The president, who's currently recovering from COVID, still rejects that conclusion. He insists he'll be back on the campaign trail next week. Peter Bowes, BBC News.
Earlier, I spoke to Katie Brzezinski, who is a political analyst and PhD research student at the University of Sheffield's Department of Politics and International Relations.
The timing of Biden's COVID diagnosis has been really instrumental in allowing some of these Democrat voices to come through. And the juxtaposition between Biden's ill health with COVID and Trump being able to campaign on the basis that he survived an assassination attempt is really quite stark. And so you've got that very visible presentation of these two men who otherwise are sort of similar age to the American public, and one is looking incredibly fragile and one now looks like he's defeated an assassination attempt.
President Biden may see this as an opportunity to regroup, have a rethink and respond to recent events.
I think he's going to want to. The trouble is that now you're starting to see these very serious, kind of quite high-profile Democrats come forward and take that moment of pause in the proceedings to vocalize their thoughts about it. None of these people want to see Joe Biden drop out of the race for policy reasons. This isn't the squad kind of talking about him not being radical enough. This is very raw policy, political sort of problem where they don't think he can beat Trump. And he's going to struggle at this point to make the case that he is strong enough, he's fit enough to not only beat Trump, but to then go on and do the demanding job of being president. And so you've got a two-stage problem. Can he beat Trump? That's the immediate problem. But then do people believe that he's strong enough to carry out the very rigorous, demanding job of being president?
And realistically, there is less than 3 weeks to decide the answer to that question if they would attempt to make any kind of smooth transition.
Well, and I think this is the key question for Democrats now, because they cannot afford and they will not want to have an ugly fight about who could possibly take Joe Biden's place on the ticket. Every day that goes by that they don't have a solid nominee or a backup plan, or they don't know whether Joe Biden is staying in the race, is a day that the Republicans can campaign on the relative strength of Trump, and they can focus on the things that they want to talk about, and everybody else is talking about who's going to be the Democrat nominee. And so the time really is ticking down now, and so Democrats behind the scenes will not only be trying to see if they can urge Joe Biden to move himself out of the race. They won't want to sort of wield a knife towards him, as it were. He's so well respected within the party. But at the same time, they need to get this in order so that they can have a sense of transition that allows them time to campaign on issues and not just on the person.
So a look at Joe Biden's prospects there.